Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I noticed the shift in Sandra a few months before the reunion ever came up. It was subtle at first. Little things. She started spending longer hours at work, then longer nights on her phone after she got home. She'd smile at her screen, thumb flying across the keys, completely oblivious to me sitting right next to her. I figured it was harmless. Maybe a group chat with friends. Maybe stress relief after a rough quarter at the firm. We all need distractions sometimes, right? So I let it slide. Then she started mentioning the college reunion. Casual at first. "It's been 10 years, Danny," she said one night while making dinner. "Everyone's coming back. It'll be fun." I nodded. Sounds like it could be good to see some old faces. She smiled, but it wasn't for me. It was like her mind was already somewhere else. In the weeks that followed, the reunion became all she talked about. She bought new dresses, tried new hairstyles, spent weekends getting ready in ways she hadn't even bothered to for our anniversary last year. One night, sitting across from her at dinner, I said, "You're putting in some serious effort. Big night?" She laughed lightly. "I just want to look good. I haven't seen these people in years." I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. "You want me to come with you?" Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "It's mostly just college friends. You'd be bored." Bored. Like being around her was some kind of punishment. I tried not to take it personally. Maybe it was just nerves, excitement about the past. But deep down, a knot started tightening in my gut. Sandra wasn't preparing for a night of memories. She was preparing for something else, and I was just too blind to see it clearly yet. The night of the reunion, Sandra came downstairs looking like a woman ready to start a whole new life without me. She wore a tight navy dress I'd never seen before, heels high enough she could barely walk, and makeup done with more care than I'd seen in years. She looked incredible. But when I whistled low and said, "You're stunning," she didn't even smile. "Thanks," she said, adjusting her earrings in the mirror without glancing my way. I slid my hands into my pockets. "You sure you don't want me coming along?" Sandra hesitated a second too long. "It's really just old friends," she said, grabbing her clutch. "You'd be bored." I nodded, but inside something shifted. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't excitement. This was a woman who didn't want her husband anywhere near her plans. So when she breezed out the door, I waited a few minutes, then grabbed my keys and followed her. She drove across town to a bar I knew well. I stayed hidden, watching from across the street. Sandra spotted someone first. Her whole face lit up. David. An old friend from Sandra's college days. The guy who never left town but was always too busy to keep in touch. They hugged. Too close, too long. Then they sat at the bar, leaning in close, talking like no one else existed. I watched them laugh. I watched her touch his arm, play with her hair the way she hadn't done around me in months. After about an hour, they walked out to the parking lot. I followed quietly, staying low behind a row of cars. Under a flickering streetlight, David pulled her close and kissed her. Not a quick peck. A full, slow kiss like they had done it 100 times before. Practiced, familiar, easy. I lifted my phone with a steady hand and snapped a few pictures, forcing myself to stay calm. They pulled apart, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, and got into his car. I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching the red glow of his taillights disappear into the night. I should have felt shocked. I should have felt angry. But as I stood there, something heavier settled into my chest. This wasn't some sudden mistake. The way they moved around each other, comfortable, automatic, it was obvious. They had done this before. And all those late nights, all those work emergencies, all those times she came home smiling at her phone. Every excuse she fed me. Now it all made sense. I drove home slow that night. No music, no radio. Just the low hum of the engine and the picture of Sandra in David's arms burning into my mind. It was funny, in a sick kind of way. I had spent weeks wondering if I was just being paranoid, and 1 hour outside a bar gave me all the answers I needed. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't pounding. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. The house looked the same when I walked inside. the porch light still on, her coat still hanging by the door. It should have hurt more. Instead, it just felt empty, like walking into a hotel room someone else had checked out of. I sat at the kitchen table, pulled out my phone and stared at the pictures. It was all there, clear as day. Her smile when she saw him. How she leaned into him like she belonged there. The way she looked at him. Like I was already a memory she didn't care about. You can explain a lot of things away. A hug, a few texts, but not that kiss. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't need to yell. Sandra had already made her choice. She just hadn't bothered to tell me yet. The next morning, Sandra stumbled in just after dawn, barefoot, mascara smudged, hair tangled like she had been out all night, which she had. I watched her from the top of the stairs. She didn't even notice me standing there. She dropped her keys on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the couch like nothing was wrong. I stared at her for a long minute, then turned and went back upstairs. The sight of her, careless, casual, used, didn't make me sad. It made me certain. This marriage wasn't broken. It was over. And now it was just a matter of finishing what she started. I didn't leave right away. That would have been too easy. Sandra deserved to wake up and realize slowly, painfully, what she'd thrown away. I spent the next few days putting my plan into motion. First, I found a small apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy. A furnished place, no memories attached. Then I opened a new bank account and started moving my paycheck. Quiet. Careful. No sudden moves that might tip her off. Sandra kept floating through life like nothing had changed. Coming home late. Smiling at her phone. Still feeding me the same tired lies about work events and girls' nights. She had no idea I knew everything. I waited until she was comfortable, sipping her wine, scrolling through her phone between bites. "Thought I saw someone who looked like David the other day," I said casually, spearing a piece of chicken. She froze for half a second. Tiny. Barely noticeable. But I caught it. "David?" she repeated, pretending to think. "Haven't seen him in years." I wiped my mouth with a napkin, kept my tone easy. "Wasn't he at the reunion?" She shook her head quickly. "No, he wasn't there." I smiled to myself. "Right. Not there. Not pressed up against you in the parking lot a few days ago." I didn't push. I didn't accuse. I just nodded and changed the subject. Let her stay comfortable in her lies a little longer. That weekend, while she was out shopping, I packed the last of what I needed. Clothes, personal documents, the old photos I wanted to keep. Everything else? I left it behind. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was just a shell. The last thing I did before I left was take off my wedding ring and set it next to her half-finished glass of wine on the counter. A simple message. When Sandra came home, she would find the place half empty, my keys on the hook, and the ring waiting for her. Plain as day. No fight, no screaming. Just silence. And if she had even a shred of awareness left, she'd know exactly what that silence meant. Sandra came home that night like nothing was wrong. I watched from my car parked down the street. She got out, heels dangling from her fingers, purse slung over one shoulder, laughing at something on her phone. Still clueless. She stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her. I gave it about 30 seconds. That's when the porch light flipped on again. The door flew open and she stumbled outside, looking around like maybe I was just hiding in the bushes, waiting to pop out and forgive her. Not tonight. Not ever. Her calls started almost immediately. First my phone, then my work phone, then my brother Christopher. I ignored every single one. I let her sit in that empty house, pacing from room to room, realizing with every step that the life she thought was waiting for her had packed up and left without a goodbye. Later, Christopher called me. "You want me to deal with her?" he asked, hearing the banging on his door. "I'll handle it," I said. When I pulled up to his house, Sandra was standing there under the porch light, hugging herself like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes were red. Her mascara was a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Danny," she said, voice breaking. "Please, just talk to me." I stepped out of the car and stood there for a moment looking at her. "You lied," I said simply. "Over and over again. And the whole time you thought I'd never catch on." She shook her head frantically. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You kissed him in a parking lot like a damn teenager. You got in his car and drove off into the night. That's not a mistake, Sandra. That's a choice." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you," she whispered. "No," I said. "You loved the fool who still believed in you." She reached out, grabbing at my jacket like she could physically hold on to something that was already gone. I pulled away. "You lost," I said calmly. "You just didn't realize it until now." Then I turned around, got back in my car, and left her standing there in the cold, exactly where she belonged. I drove across town to my new apartment. Second floor, quiet. A view of the city lights at night and no ghosts in the walls. The divorce papers went out the next morning. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't need one. Sandra tried calling, tried texting, tried showing up at Christopher's house again. The answer was always the same: silence. The papers were simple. No fights over property, no arguments about money. I didn't want the house or the furniture. Let her have it all. I wanted distance. I wanted freedom. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Mark, an old mutual friend who hadn't picked sides. "You hear about Sandra?" he asked. "No," I said, keeping my voice flat. He hesitated. "She's a mess. Not working, not going out. Word is she's barely getting out of bed." I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Sandra had built the fire herself. All I did was let her burn. The signed divorce papers showed up in my mailbox 3 days later. No apology note tucked inside. No final plea. Just Sandra's shaky signature at the bottom of the page, like she could barely keep her hand steady long enough to finish her own ending. Final. Permanent. Friends asked if I was okay. Christopher kept checking in, waiting for me to break down. But the truth was simple. I wasn't mourning. I wasn't angry. I was lighter than I'd felt in years. Sandra, though, she stayed stuck. She stayed in the big house with the empty closets and the wine-stained carpet. She kept trying to date again, according to Mark, but none of it stuck. Maybe because no matter how many new faces she chased, she kept carrying the same regret around with her. You don't come back from burning the only bridge that ever mattered. And deep down, I think Sandra finally realized it. But by then, I was already too far away to hear her scream. Starting over was easier than I thought. The new place wasn't much. Old hardwood floors, a kitchen barely big enough for one person. But it was mine. No shared closets, no framed wedding photos staring at me from the walls, no tension thick enough to choke on. Just peace. I got a new job downtown, something smaller, less corporate. I also joined a gym and started running again. I filled my days with things that made me feel alive, not with things that made me feel like I was auditioning for someone's attention. The past faded faster than I expected. Every once in a while, Mark or Christopher would mention Sandra. "She's still in the old house," Mark said once over drinks. "Word is she's different. Looks older, like life hit her harder than she thought it would." I just nodded. Sandra had chosen the past over the future, chased old memories until they became her prison. I didn't need updates. I didn't need revenge. She was already living her consequences every day she woke up alone in a house built for two. Some nights, sitting on the small balcony outside my apartment, beer in hand, city lights blinking in the distance, I'd think about the man I used to be. The one who stayed up late waiting for her to come home. The one who believed love could survive anything if you just worked hard enough. I didn't hate him. He was just young, blind. You need to lose the wrong person to understand your own worth sometimes. Sandra's biggest mistake wasn't kissing David in that parking lot. It wasn't the lies or the texts, or even walking out on everything we had built. Her biggest mistake was thinking I'd still be standing there when she decided to look back. But I wasn't. I was already too far gone. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't waiting for her to catch up. I was just living. Free. Clear. Done. Thank you for watching.